The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the data reporting webinar for the SSBG data collection website. At the end of the webinar, we'll be doing a Q&A session, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to work them into the webinar. If we're unable to touch on them during the webinar, we will during the Q&A portion. Before we get into the main content of our presentation, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Yolanda Butler so she can introduce her team over at OCS.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Or good afternoon to some of us. I want to welcome you to the webinar on the Social Services Block Grant Portal. We've made some changes to the portal to make it more secure for you and for us. I want to acknowledge the members of my team. There is Artish Fountain. Artish, if you could say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. And Darlene Tart-Scott. Darlene had an emergency and she may be joining us a little bit later, but I know she shares her hello with our members of the community and our grant recipients. We also have support members of the team, Jay Sultan, who is likely available, and then Juliana Malara, who aren't pictured. Before I turn it back over to my colleagues at WRMA, I want to also wish you a happy Older Americans Month, our Older Adults Month. This is a month celebrated in May of each year and led by the HHS Administration for Community Living. We have some exciting events in partnership with them forthcoming this month, as I know many programs with SSBG work with older adults. I also want to acknowledge Community Action Awareness Month, which takes place in May. Many of our local partners are community-based organizations and community action agencies authorized by the original legislation for the old Office of Economic Opportunity, which created OCS many years ago. So with that, I wish you a wonderful month, and I will turn things back over so that we can learn more about our change to our portal and have a refresher for today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Butler. Hi, everyone. My name is Noah Bach, and I'm a research associate here at WRMA. Today, I'm joined by Zach Eckstein, who is the project director for the SSBG project.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Zach. So our main goals for, our first main goal for this webinar is to show you the new website location for the SSBG portal. The new web address is ssbgportal.acf.hhs.gov. After the webinar, we highly recommend you all bookmark the new web address just to enable for ease of access. We'll also demonstrate the navigation and use of the SSBG data collection website today, as well as discuss the elements of SSBG reporting. The SSBG, sorry, my computer buffered for a sec. The SSBG data collection website is used for data collection, but also to complete the required SSBG reporting. the required reports being the intended use plans and pre-expenditure reports. Those are submitted before the start of each fiscal year, and the post-expenditure report, which is submitted after the end of each fiscal year. We're going to go into more detail about the submission process of those reports a little later in the webinar, but the SSBG data collection website also allows users to track the status of the data they submit, resubmit the data when necessary, and export copies of report data for their own records. In order to obtain an SSBG portal account, you would need to be an authorized user. I assume most of you on this webinar already are authorized users, but in case you're not, you would have to contact the SSBG program contact. Your SSBG program contact can get the authorized users form. They would do that either by going to the SSBG portal website and downloading it from the resources section, or by emailing support@ssbgportal.net. It's very important that I point out that despite the new website location, the support email will remain the same throughout the change. So any support questions you have would still be directed to support@ssbgportal.net. So your SSBG program contact will complete and resubmit the authorized users form back to the team. This form, the main intent of the form is to add or remove user accounts from your respective state or territory. So your SSBG program contact would resubmit that to us, and yeah. So this is what the authorized users form looks like. There are submission instructions on top of the form, as well as 3 main sections to fill out. The first section is for submitting the SSBG program contacts information. The SSBG program contact is the person in charge of the SSBG program for your respective state or territory. The second section on the authorized users form contains the SSBG primary contacts information. The primary contact is the link between the state and the portal. They're the contact person if you have any questions about reports, data validation, and general use of the website. This is the person who you would reach out to. The last section of the form is for submitting the name and email of anybody else who the state would like to have an account. Those would be the authorized users. The SSBG support team, will go off of the most recently submitted authorized users form. This means that anyone who was previously listed on the form who had an account will have their account deactivated if they're not listed on the most recently submitted authorized users form. So that is an important thing to note just about the process of filling out the form. So this is the front page of the SSBG data collection website. There are 3 key locations on the navigation bar that you're going to use most frequently, those being the forms, resources, and profile dropdowns. The forms dropdown enables users to access the required SSBG reporting forms, those being the intended use plan and pre and post expenditure reports. The resources link allows users to download resources like the user guide and the authorized users form, as well as stream video of the most recent SSBG webinar. The profile dropdown on the far right allows you to change your password, update your account information, and manually log out of the portal. So this is what, so this is what the forms dropdown link looks like. It contains links to the 3 main reports. So now I'm going to turn it over to Zach, and he'll walk you through the submission process of each of these forms, and then we'll go to a live demo on the SSBG data collection website. So take it away, Zach.
Thank you very much, Noah.
Of course.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be walking you through the 3 different reports. First, we'll be taking a look at them on each of these slides, and I'll point out some of the different elements. And then we'll head over to the website to just take a look at what they look like on there and point out some features there as well. If you do have any questions, again, please go ahead and feel free to post those into the chat box. I don't see any at the moment, so we'll go ahead and continue forward. But again, if you do have those questions, post them in the chat and we'll try to address them as they come up if we can. All right. So the first one that we'll take a look at is going to be the page for the intended use plan submission. So you'll see here that we have our year selector, which is which fiscal year you're selecting your intended use plan for to submit. To the right of that is the kind of status indicator, so who it's for, what year, and what the status of this particular plan is. Below that is where you'll have your file selector, the browse button, in order to pick what you're going to be uploading as your intended use plan. And then on the far right is where the submit button is. So once you've uploaded the correct file, you'll go ahead and use that to submit. For your intended use plans, OCS now has us using the PDF that they have created for intended use plan submission. That is also located in a folder in the resources section if you don't already have a copy of that. That form, that PDF, in addition to any other documents you want to submit as part of your intended use plan, should all be placed into a folder, and that folder should be zipped or compressed into a single folder, and then you can upload that zipped folder as your intended use plan set of documents. It's important to note that the last thing that you've chosen to upload to the website is the only document it will keep. So if you upload one Word document and then one PDF, the only thing that will be in the website is the PDF, the last thing you uploaded. That's why you need to upload it all together as a zip file. All right. Taking a look at the pre-expenditure report now, the report's identified at the top. We have our year selector and the status in the middle there. And to the right of the year selector, you'll see our export full report button. This will allow you to download your report in a variety of different formats, including PDF and for Microsoft Excel. So if you want to pull that data down after you've submitted it so you can see exactly what your submission was, you'll be able to do so. Then we have the meat of the report, which has several pages. And you can see that from these tabs here. We have the definitions page, the expenditures page, and the recipients page. Those three are the same on the pre-expenditure report and the post-expenditure report with just some small variation. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the post-expenditure report screen, which as you can see looks very similar with the same elements. What we're going to be pointing out on this one here for the post-expenditure report is that there may be validations, questions that the website will ask you to answer before your data submission can be completed. These are certain criteria that OCS has set where if your data falls into a certain range, they're going to want to know just a little bit of additional information about that service and to verify the data is correct. To do that, you just click on the validations tab right there, and you'll see some very clear questions that will let you know exactly what data OCS is looking for to verify. Down at the bottom of the expenditures part of the report, there are some important rows I'd like to point out. Number 1 is row 31 for administrative costs. And then down below that, we have row number 34, which is your remaining funds to be carried forward into the next fiscal year. Neither of these fields can be left blank. You'll see that the first one on the left is asking about your SSBG allocation funds, so funds you received for FY 2022, let's say. If you're not expending them in FY 2022, but you're carrying them forward into 23 because you have 2 years to spend those funds, you'll make sure you mark the amount you're carrying forward in that first box. On the right, for the second box, that's going to be for any transferred funds that you're carrying forward. So if you transferred some amount of your TANF block grant into SSBG and you didn't expend those funds in that fiscal year, but you're going to be expending them in the next fiscal year as per the rules, you'll want to make sure how much funds you're carrying forward are noted in that box there. The boxes cannot be left blank, so if you're going to be carrying forward 0 funds, please just go ahead and put a 0 in row 34. If you do leave it blank, the website will notify you of an error that will need to be corrected before your submission can be complete. So if you do run into that error, the website will let you know, and this is where you will fix it. Finally, down at the bottom, we have a few comment boxes. These are related to specific columns on the expenditures report. So the first one asks you about your funds that you transferred into the SSBG. Where did those funds come from? And the answer is TANF. And then please list the source of these funds refers to your other federal, state, and local funds. So if you expended SSBG money for a particular service, we also ask that you give us the sum total of all other federal, state, and local funds that were expended for that service in that fiscal year. Because it's one lump sum, we provide the comment box to ask if you could give us some of the sources of where that sum comes from, the different grants or funding sources that constitute that total. Finally, the last box down there at the bottom is for other services. So line 29 is a service category called other services, and it's intended to catch everything that is not characterized by the other named services, but still goes towards the goals of SSBG. So if you do expend dollars in the other services category, we simply ask that you give us some sort of description of what those other services were. This is the top of the recipients tab. You can see we have our age categories that we ask for reporting, as well as a few total columns. Those will automatically sum based on the row. To the right of that, there are some check boxes about those totals, whether they were actual, estimated, or sampled, if the counts are duplicated or unduplicated. And as well, we ask you to enter some text that is the eligibility criteria for that service, if there is any particular, more specific eligibility criteria. So finally, we'll take a look at some of the validation related things. Up here at the top is actually a list of errors that we have, and you can see it identifies exactly what the error is and what line that error is on. And then down below, that big red box under our year selector, you can see a nice little manila box or yellow that tells us about our validations, and we can see that the validations tab has been added to our reporting form down there at the bottom. Like I said, the validations tab will identify a particular flaw or question that they would just like you to respond to. So you can go ahead and provide some sort of narrative response that just responds directly to that question for OCS to review when they're looking at your report. Once you've completed your reports, you've been working on them, maybe they're not ready yet, and you hit save, that's when your report will be in the in-process submission status. Once you've hit the submit button and confirmed, that is when you have submitted your report, and your report status will change to review in process. This means that your report will be locked for editing and is in OCS's queue for review. There are two results after that once your report is review in process. It will either be accepted, and you'll receive an email to that effect, or it will be asked for resubmission requested, and you will also receive an email to that effect. If your report is resubmission requested status, you will be able to go back in and edit the report. As well, your OCS program specialist will likely be reaching out to you to let you know what the particular changes or update clarification that they need in order to be able to accept your report. Once you make the edits, you can hit the submit button again, and your report will go back into the review in process status for OCS to take a look at. All right, we're going to go ahead and head over to a live demonstration of the site. One thing that you will notice is that this is a test site filled with test information. And it has the old URL because it is the test site. The SSBG portal does use multi-factor authentication. So in order to log in, the first time you log in, it will ask you for either a phone number or if you would like to use the Google Authentication app. You can do a voice message where a computer will call you and read you a 6-digit code, or you can receive a text message in order to set that multi-factor authentication login. If you set your desk phone for some reason and then you're at home and you cannot access the website because you don't have access to your phone that you have selected, you can contact the support desk and we can reset that for you If you know that you might be changing to a different phone, you'll want to go ahead and log in with your old phone and then make the update to your new phone before you lose access to your old phone. But if you do, you can always contact support to have that alleviated. You make that change over in your profile section on the right there. So taking a look at each of these forms, we'll go ahead and start with the pre-expenditure report. Again, this is just test data, so this is not actually Arizona's data. We have our year selector here. And as you can see, we have some example data filled in. We're asking you for some contact information for your state official, your SSBG contact, and your state CFO. As well, on the definitions tab, we're looking for the definition of children, adult, and families for your state. And then finally, there are some particular assurances that the particular rules of SSBG are being followed. So that includes the 2-year carryover period. So you must expend those funds within 2 years. And as well, the TANF transfer limits and expenditure rules in terms of services for children and families whose income is less than 200% of the official federal poverty line. If for some reason you're not able to check off any of these assurances or yes to the boxes, you'll probably need to contact the support team or your OCS program specialist to get that resolved. That's not anticipated, however. On your pre-expenditure report, most of you will already have this pre-selected from your previous choice, but if you do ever need to make a change to what your reporting fiscal year is, whether it's state or federal, you'll indicate that on the pre-expenditure report for that fiscal year. You have to set which fiscal year you're operating on, whether state or federal, when you do your pre-expenditure report. Taking a look at the expenditures tab, you can see we just have some sparse data filled in here to show that some of these things automatically total and everything has added up, as well as some example text to add in for our explanations. We'll take a brief look at the post-expenditure report as well, just to see any small differences there. So as you can see, we have to fill in this information again to confirm that it is the same, because that does change sometimes between the pre and post expenditure reporting. Expenditures, so these are going to be your actual expenditures for that fiscal year instead of the planned ones like in the pre-expenditure report. Small examples here. Again, recipients, much the same. And now we have our validations. Validations only really occur for the post-expenditure report. On the pre-expenditure report, you might encounter some errors, but no validations, only on the post-expenditure report. We can take a brief look at what the reports that are available are. We have the pre-post comparison report. Let's see if we have data loaded for this. We do have a little bit of data. So in the SSBG annual report, there are 2 performance measures that are published for each of the states. There's going to be the administrative cost performance measure, which is your percent of administrative costs to your total expenditures for SSBG. As well, there's the performance to plan measure that says what were your planned expenditures on your pre-expenditure report and how does your post-expenditure report match up. So as you can see here, if you would like to get a preview of what your particular performance measure is going to come out to be, you're able to do so. And you'll be able to get this as soon as you submit both the pre and post expenditure report for that reporting year. So you'll be able to see this as soon as it's available to be calculated and not have to wait for the annual report or do your own calculations. Finally, we'll just take a look at the resources folders that we have here. So as you can see, we've got a user guide resource, but on the live website, the folder that you will want to access is going to be the forms, user guide, and webinar recordings folder. That is going to be the folder that's going to have all this information, including the authorized users form, the intended use plan form, it will keep a copy of this webinar for streaming on the SSBG website. So if you want to review any portion of this particular webinar, you will be able to do so directly through the SSBG website by selecting that resource. So that concludes the live demonstration of the website. We walk through each of the different reports. There's the expenditures piece, the recipients piece, and the definitions piece. All three of those tabs will need to be filled out. And on the post-expenditure report, if there are any questions about validation issues or errors, the website will inform you of those when you go to submit, so you can make those corrections and then complete your submission and your SSBG reporting requirements. I'm not seeing any questions pop up in the chat, and it does seem like we were able to move through this fairly quickly this year. So if there's anything that you would like us to review or go back on, we'd be happy to. As far as for OCS, we have, like we introduced at the beginning, the SSBG staff there of Artish Fountain and Darlene Tart-Scott. They are your program specialists for the different regions and territories. So hopefully you know who your program specialist is if you have any questions for OCS. But if you don't, here we have the regions posted here, and I'm sure they'd be happy to direct you to the appropriate person. Finally, if you need to contact us here at WRMA for support in terms of figuring out the website, getting an authorized users form, or there's something weird going on with your account of any sort, go ahead and email us at support@ssbgportal.net. Again, that's ssbgportal.net, which is the same as it has always been, even though the website is changing to ssbgportal.acf.hhs.gov. And I'd like to give everybody just one last reminder that if you want to do it now or when the webinar ends, to go ahead and update your links and bookmarks to the new website address. That way you'll be able to find it into the future. Okay. I'll let everyone know again that if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box. I'll see if I can check and see if there are any particular hands raised, as I know that is also a feature there. I do see one hand raised. So perhaps if that person has a question, if they would like to type it into the chat box. Did we end up with questions in the question pane? Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Yes, I apologize. I did not see. Normally, everyone decides to put their questions in the chat and ignores the question pane. So we'll go ahead and address these now. So first we have the slides will the slides be available for us to view at a later time? And the answer is yes. You can either review them through the actual streaming webinar, or we'll also post them to the resources folder in the website so you can download the actual PowerPoint slides if you want to go through those. If you want to go ahead and add a new user without listing all the other users on the form, I would recommend, if you don't want to make a new form, you can just update your old form that you have submitted. You can just keep an updated version of that form and keep resubmitting that one updated. The next question we have is, what does duplicated versus unduplicated mean? Does that mean they aren't counted in any other SSBG funded program? So I'm not sure if anyone at OCS would like to clarify about this. I believe the duplicated and unduplicated are about the counts of recipients for the service. So if your service somehow produces a duplicated or unduplicated account for the services they provide, that would be something about how they count their individuals. I suspect that for most services, it's an unduplicated count of the number of individuals served. But sometimes maybe if you provide the same service to an individual multiple times, some services may consider that one one service for one individual. But if it's something like congregate meals, let's say, the same individual getting 3 different congregate meals at 3 different times might be considered like an unduplicated count of just the recipients of the meals. So it's highly specific to the service that is provided.
Zach, this is Yolanda Butler again. I just wanted to say that you did a great job in answering that question. We don't have anything else to add at this time. If there are additional questions, nuances to that particular question, I would ask the writer to reach out to your analyst, and we will get a more detailed response to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So how much does it matter that the pre and post reports match? So in terms of the particular performance measure, that's simply trying to give us a way to evaluate how the planning is going versus how the actual expenditures are, dispersed. But one of the key strengths of the SSBG program and the way the funds are is that if you do need to make a change at some point, you're able to do so. And up to a certain point in the year, I believe, you're able to make edits to your pre-expenditure report if those changes have been made. So there's no particular punishment metric or reward metric for this particular measure. We're just simply trying to assess how able are states able to plan and implement their plans versus when circumstances might make those plans change. All right. So is it possible to upload several documents rather than just one zipped or PDF file for your intended use plan? And the answer is no. If you do have several documents, they will need to be in a zip folder or a single PDF file. The next question that I have here is, when are the states made aware of their full allocations for the fiscal year? And I am not sure of that answer. I know that there is a Dear Colleague letter that goes out for each quarter of funding that is released. If OCS would like to clarify.
Sure. Thank you, Zach. This is Yolanda Butler again. We are beholden to the federal budget process each year. And as you may know, Congress often is not ready with a full fiscal year's budget at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, which is October 1. As such, we are generally operating under a continuing resolution, which is effectively a temporary budget. That temporary budget is based on the previous fiscal year's award amount, and we generally proportion our awards to the states and territories based on the percentage of funds available for the time frame that the award is provided. For example, I'll use the first quarter's award for last year. We did not have a full budget on October 1. We made a budget award for the first quarter in November, and we effectively provided for each state and territory their proportion of funding as if it were based on the previous year's funding, which was about $1.7 million, as it would have been at that point in time. Generally speaking, Congress has made available for SSBG for many years now at about 1.6 or 1.7. So your amounts should be relatively consistent but knowing that the formula is based on a proportion of the population to as it relates to the formula amount. So short answer, we are not sure what Congress's final budget will be each fiscal year with certainty on October 1, but we presume or make awards based on whatever temporary or proportion that they provide for us in the temporary budget, using the previous year's award as the guide. And then once the final fiscal year's budget is made available, if history is any guide, usually between December and January, at that point we know what the, generally speaking, what the full fiscal year's amount will be. I would direct you, given history about where we've been each year, to look at your previous year's total allotment for your guide as the current year. I hope that answers your question. If not, please do send a message to your analyst and we will provide additional information to you about the federal budget process and how it applies to the social services block grant. Moreover, what we project your fiscal year 22 funding to be. Thank you, and I'm turning it back over to Zach.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so throughout the year, and then we have our next question is, will the validation tab on the post-expenditure report show when submitting the report? Because currently they only see the tabs for definitions, expenditures, and recipients. And yes, that is correct. The validation tab will only show on the post-expenditure report and only once you've tried to submit it, and then only if it's needed. So if there's no particular flags or flaws in your data when you submit it, you'll never see the validations tab. All right. And then, we've got more questions down here. Wonderful. We have, I'm not able to see the admin performance measure report. So the only performance measure on the website is the performance to plan measurement. That's because it has a comparison of the pre and post expenditure reports and the different columns there. So it requires a little bit of specific formula calculation. The administrative cost measure is not included anywhere because it's a simple percentage of, your total admin cost against your total SSBG expenditures. So that's not provided on the website directly anywhere. So I got a question, can we fix that problem about uploading only one document? We can certainly look into it. I know that it's about resources and security in terms of not letting people upload as much as possible or a set amount. So we can certainly look into it. But for now, the zipped folder is the best way to go. If you have everything open, let's say in File Explorer, if you simply highlight all with Control A or by clicking and dragging, you can right click and send to a zipped or compressed folder. Or if you have everything highlighted, in the top ribbons there's a button that lets you export it to a compressed folder as well. If anybody needs any help with that or demonstration, I'd be happy to do so. Or if you would like individual help in making sure your intend to use plan folder has everything you need in it, you can contact support for that as well. All right, our next question is, when will the third quarter awards be released? So if OCS has any information on that, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely, thank you. This is Yolanda Butler again. At this point, we are planning to release third quarter funds in mid-May. We are rounding up and finalizing our processes, and it is our goal to get those funds out to you. Dr. Howard has set a goal as the middle of the month. And you will receive a Dear Colleague letter. Expect to receive one the week of the 15th. With the notice of award, as well as the letter just in general talking about the total amounts available and the amounts awarded to date. If there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. And back to Zach.
Looks like we're seeing the questions slow down here. I'm not seeing any new ones. So if you do have any further questions, now would be the time. You can let us know. And if you think of them later, you can go ahead and feel free to email the support team and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So once again, you can contact us at support@ssbgportal.net. And thank you all very much. So with that, we'll go ahead and let everybody go early, it seems. I believe we'll probably schedule this webinar for just an hour chunk of time in the future to make sure that we keep your calendars clean. But thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, OCS. And if you do have any questions, again, support@ssbgportal.net.